Well, I can't wait for this conversation because I am here with the ladies of the Pastor's Wives Tell All podcast. Hi, ladies.
Hello. Hi.
We have already been laughing, so you're just going to have to go ahead and jump in with us into this conversation. Here's what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to have you introduce, like, say your name and introduce yourselves so that people can get used to whose voice belongs to who.
Hello, my name is Jenna, and my husband's name is Ian, and we have been in ministry. Oh my goodness. We weren't always in ministry, but my husband stepped out about 8 or 9 years ago from teaching full time to pursue ministry full time. And he is actually a worship pastor. He's done a little bit of everything. He's been a youth pastor. He's been a worship pastor. He has his own worship nonprofit where he disciples other worship pastors.
Wow.
So discipleship is his heart. And I know you talk about that on the podcast.
We love that around here. That's right.
But currently his role at our church is he's a discipleship pastor there, but he's also the production director currently.
Oh, yeah.
So yes. And what was the other thing you asked me? Did you want to know what I do also? Because
I mean, I'd
totally
love to
missed
know.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
Tell everyone.
So I like to describe myself as a content creator. I guess that's what people say now. I create content for a lot of different things. But I'm also a photographer. So I kind of throw that in there as well. And I work for Jessica's nonprofit, Come Away Missions, doing a lot of tech work, and kind of use that here with the podcast as well. So
that's right. Are you the designer of all of the Pastor's Wives Tell All merch?
Yes, I am. I mean, it's a collective effort. Like, we come up with ideas all together. They have awesome ideas, and I kind of like make it come to fruition.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Hello, my name is Jessica, and my husband is Jonathan, and he is a pastor at Village Church here in Alabama. Okay. And we have actually been in ministry our whole entire marriage, which is almost 20 years next year. And kind of like Jenna, we spent the majority of our time as youth pastors, and now he is in the lead pastor role. And I run a nonprofit called Come Away Missions that Jenna was just speaking about, and absolutely love it. And it is based out of Rwanda, Africa. And guess what? Everything is based around discipleship of what we do. It is all based on discipleship. So it's a beautiful thing. Love doing it. And I get to work with these ladies all the time.
Now listeners are going, yeah, we're beginning to see why Courtney had them on.
And speaking of discipleship, my name is Stephanie. I am married to Isaac. He is a youth pastor, and we have served in youth ministry together for 15 years. He's done a total of 16 years, and he is huge on discipleship as well, which it is kind of funny, but discipling these kids so that it's not just we show up at church and we get entertained and then we show up and now we have a job to do. He actually gives them responsibilities. We have a prayer team. We have an outreach team. We have a worship team, all made up of youth kids. The adults are not doing it. So yeah, they even run our games and everything. Cool. Like, they are doing the work and serving in the church. And that's just our heart, is teaching them this is what the church is supposed to be. We're supposed to be doing. So that's awesome. Love that. Personally, right now I work at my kids' school as an administrative assistant. I also have in the past done blogging and influencer work. But right now, of course, my heart and passion is this podcast with these ladies, and using some of that writing that I've done before, taking that and putting that into the podcast, which I absolutely love.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, I was introduced to you guys on Instagram, actually. And I'm sure you're not surprised by this, but it was your dance videos. Because I grew up Baptist, and we don't dance in Baptist churches, right?
Right.
Especially the pastor's wife. And
how dare us?
and then I loved that. And then I saw the name of your podcast, Pastor's Wives Tell All. And I am a pastor's kid. So my mom was always wanting, like, to do something that reached out to pastors' wives. So, because, we were always in smaller churches, and in sometimes in smaller towns as well. And so she always thought, man, I feel like as a pastor's wife for many years, I've got some experience that can maybe help, younger, new pastors' wives. And she always had a dream of that. And so I love that you guys are doing exactly that. First of all, the name Pastors' Wives Tell All. You're like, ooh, yes, please do tell.
Do tell.
But if you go and look at your podcast, it really is helpful. How did you guys come up with the idea to start doing this?
Okay. So I guess I will try to shorten this story because I feel like it could be kind of long. So we're going to make it as short as possible. But basically, these two have been friends for years. Okay. I moved to this town 5 years ago, and I had come out of a hard time at our previous church, just feeling lonely, needed community. And a couple years into living here, which by the way, let me just throw this out there. I love my church, and I have always felt from the time I got there till now that I fit. So let me just throw that out there. But okay. So, and I do have friends there, but a couple years into it, I met Jessica first because I was coming up with this idea for a women's conference, and I heard that Jessica was the gal to get it done. And I wanted to have a team. So I reached out to her. We started building a friendship. She introduced me to Jenna. Then we started building a friendship. Then like the three of us collectively, wow. However, we became friends all together. And I kind of had this thought in the back of my mind that pastors' wives need what we have. Yeah. They're lonely. A lot of them struggle, and people don't even know what their struggles are. They don't even know how to help. And so I had already had that stirring in the back of my head, and I knew the Lord was impressing on my heart to like minister to women. He was doing the same thing with this one. And just, so I had just thrown out, of course, how that's what he does. So I just threw out the idea to each of them kind of individually. And then we decided like, hey, this really could be a thing. Like we could really make a podcast talking about all of these things. And I think it was Jessica who came up with the name. We were trying to like decide, like, what could we call it? What could it be? And she's like, Pastors' Wives Tell All. And I'm like, yes, that is it. That is the name. And so we started on this journey together. We had no idea what it was going to end up being. We had no idea that one silly reel would bring in thousands upon thousands of women and then grow our podcast itself. And then bring this community of women together. So many women reaching out and just saying, I was so alone, and y'all have just made me feel like I have people now. So I love that. And I think when you listen to your podcast, you really do feel like you guys kind of invite us in to your friendship. The really like deep parts, the really silly parts, like, there's not one of your episodes that I listen to where I'm not laughing because you guys, you guys just laugh together. I mean, it's like friends hanging out, right? But you're talking about some like deeper, harder things. You guys even say that you want to give people in a peek into your glass houses, because sometimes we tend to put like our pastor and our pastor's wife up on a pedestal. It's so funny because growing up as a pastor's kid, people will be like, okay, all right, we need to comb your hair because we're going to lunch at the pastor's house. And I'm like, it's just the pastor's house. Like, like their kids are dirty too, Like, believe me,
currently they're dirty too. Yeah.
That's right. Like right now, like right now. That's why they're not on TV or on the screen. Yeah. But like for me, being the kid in the situation, I didn't quite understand why people did that. And I think that one of the interesting things is I got to know more about my mom and the ministry that her and my dad did. And as she kind of revealed a little bit more to me, she kind of revealed some of the struggles, the unique struggles that pastors' wives go through. And we all have those that like we feel like no one else can understand. Can you kind of give us an insight into some of those unique struggles that pastors' wives kind of walk through?
Yeah. How long you got? I think we can all just kind of mention a few. Just personally, for me, the things that I have dealt with as a pastor's wife, I think one of the biggest was my husband and I went through a lot of church hurt.
Mm.
And I think in that church hurt, um, you're dealing with messy people, as you know, you grew up in it.
Mhm.
And it's like so many women say, it's the best part of ministry and it's the worst part of ministry. And I think that the thing that was a struggle for me is first in my early 20s, I didn't know who I was yet. And
Yeah.
I mean, 30s and 40s, I mean, we're still learning who we are. But I think
Mhm.
early on, I could have done a better job of just knowing who my identity was. And I knew, and I was a strong believer, but a lot of times the way that I came across was not the best way. I'm very strong. And I say what is on my mind. And in my 20s, that sometimes was not as sweet as it is now in my, almost 40. And so that was a struggle for me because I think people saw me one way, but really I was trying to help them. But with church hurt, oh, I just feel like no one was out there speaking about it. So I had no
Yeah.
clue that it was this bad. And my parents were in ministry. So I saw church
Okay.
hurt, but to have it done to my husband and to me at such a high level that it was really hard. And I didn't know what to do with it afterwards because I was
Mhm.
like, Lord, is this really what you want from us forever? Because
Mm.
this could happen again.
Yeah.
So it's just feeling alone would be a big one, especially after church hurt, but also just our identity on who we are. I am more than just a pastor's wife. And a lot of times you
Mm.
get so wrapped up in the church of feeling like people always need you and they always have questions for you and they're always calling you and all of this stuff. And sometimes I think I've said this before that we can get a God complex.
Uh,
And
wow.
what happens is I remember when we did go through the church hurt and we stepped into another church, I was like, man, it feels so weird not to be needed. And it was nice
Mm.
at first. It was nice at first. I enjoyed it. But then
Yeah.
it was like, oh man, but what else am I? But because everyone
Mm.
I needed that. Like I was like, oh, and then I'm like, oh man, was that more about me and my selfish desires about being wanted? And so I really had to process that and talk about it. But that was a few things for me.
I have a question about the church hurt before we
Mhm.
move on.
Yeah.
Did you, with the church hurt, was it a situation where then you guys stayed at the church or did that
No,
result in a move?
so we were there for 9 years and we got fired.
Okay.
So yeah, I this was one of the big things was churches a lot of times are just so unhealthy in the way that they do a lot of backdoor meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And, one or two people get this idea and it only takes one or two people for the enemy to use
That's
to
right.
wreak havoc in other people's lives and ministry. And that's what happened at our church.
Mhm.
And then, so yeah, it was a really big ordeal. Whole city knew about it. There was a lot of people that left,
Yeah.
So it was big.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a
And
lot.
the reason I ask is because you stayed in ministry and that,
Yeah.
like, I know so many people that are like, nope, that's it. I'm out.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that when that happened, we stepped away for a few weeks.
Uh-huh.
And as I've told in our podcast, my husband had to, drag me to church about 3 to 4 weeks later because I just wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
But what we did is we found healing. And what we did is we
Mm.
found a church that was healthy, not perfect, but healthy,
Yeah.
and brought everything to the light and all of these new things that we had never known that church could be behind the doors.
Wow.
And so that's what we learned how to have a healthy church and create a new culture in the church that the Lord was going to give us. And
Okay.
so it was a beautiful thing. It was
Yeah.
worth it. I don't want to go through it again, but it was worth it because we grew
Right.
so much.
Right.
I think another thing that pastors' wives deal with, and honestly, like I didn't even realize all of the things and how many things there were that pastors' wives deal with until I became one.
Mm.
One of them being you feel like you have to be a certain way or act a certain way or even look a certain way or serve a certain way there's just all of these stereotypes that go along with it. You can't have tattoos. Oh, you're a pastor's wife and you have tattoos? You have a nose ring? Oh, then you must not.
Do all
you
y'all
must not
have
be
tattoos?
saved.
Do you have matching tattoos?
We have lots
You
of
have matching
tattoos.
tattoos. Oh my gosh.
We do have matching tattoos. Yes.
I love it.
So
Love it. Okay.
that was a big thing for us. So our tattoos actually, they each have our individual birth flowers on them. And
okay.
honestly, like we wanted to get them together as just a sign of like growth, like how much we've grown through this podcast, all in individual and together ways.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool moment for us, I think. So
I love it.
yes. So, but just there's so many different things that go along with being a pastor's wife. You know, like I said, there's so many just ways that people think pastors' wives are supposed to be. And if you're not those, then you feel like you've failed.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to be everything that everybody thinks you have to be. You need to be who God created you to be, because the world doesn't need another, they need you. Like the world needs you, not another clone copy, another her. And so, yes, but then just not feeling like you can, and Stephanie can probably talk about this a little bit, but just not feeling like you can talk about a lot of your struggles, because what will people think? So Stephanie can talk more about that one.
And like what she's saying, really, I struggled with friendship. I kind of mentioned that, community, friendship, feeling like you can't talk to people about things. So you tend to close up. In fact, I was even told, and I'm pretty sure I shared this advice with other people along the way, that you can't really have friends in your church, especially. Like you have to be real careful. And I remember being very closed up. I was afraid that if I shared too much, that what if I accidentally gossiped? What if I said the wrong thing? What if I did the wrong thing? I was like super positive about things because I didn't want to say how I was really feeling. Even with my marriage, I made it look like we did not have problems. I did not talk about that because then I thought, oh gosh, I've heard if you talk about your husband, then, that's bad. You're not supposed to do that. And I'm not saying we should go around and just bash our husbands, but it was to an unhealthy point where I was like pretending to be something that I wasn't. And then I struggled. And I think this is something for a lot of pastors' wives, is not only do we feel like we can't share these things, well, then that causes problems because now you're alone. You're literally swimming alone.
Yeah.
You've got nobody there to have your back, to really have your back and to understand some of the things you're going through. So that's one of the biggest things we talk about, is finding community. You can do it. And let's talk about how, because like that is a common struggle with almost everybody we talk to. Right.
Yeah. I watched my parents, and one of the things that as we started getting older and started getting married, that they wanted us to know is that you are going to struggle in your marriage, and that's totally normal, and it's okay. And that it's absolutely okay to seek help for that. And we happen to be at our church, we met a couple who are our marriage mentors. And when we're struggling and we're having a moment, it's basically like, call us when the hard starts, don't wait until it's completely broken to get help. Yes. Like call us when it starts with a discussion instead of like an intervention, which is so wonderful to have that. And I know that a lot of people don't have that, especially pastors. And I know my parents actually, in a time when it was not okay, like you said, Stephanie, that it wasn't okay to like say that there were issues in their marriage. They went, and because of some things that were going on, actually not in their marriage, but in our extended family, and they wanted to make sure that their marriage remained strong, they went and got marriage counseling.
Yeah, I love it.
And there were people that had a really, really big problem with that. Like,
I think that like the biggest thing is when we, especially when I my husband stepped into a lead pastor role, I was really like, what do I share? It like what you're talking about. And learning and being with these ladies and learning over the years with other relationships and being at a church that loves you no matter what. And I know that's not for everybody, doesn't have that. And I get it, but I can speak to my church and the vulnerability when I am vulnerable, which is hard for me to do. But when I am vulnerable, that's when walls are broken. And that's when I built such a community with the women of my church. And so they're able to share with me, but they also know that we're not perfect, because what they see is what my husband is doing on stage and what we're all doing behind the scenes, but that we still have the same issues. And it's like, oh, you do too? Like, they're just shocked that we have the same issues. But when that happens, that's when the communication is wide open, and that's when healing can happen.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, you're talking about that, and talk to those of us that aren't a pastor's wife, and there are unvoiced expectations. We, on another episode where we interviewed a pastor and his wife, she said, when I was young, I assumed that the pastor's wife was going to disciple me. And when she didn't reach out to do so, I got hurt. And she goes, now that I am a pastor's wife, I realize how ridiculous that expectation was, because she couldn't have discipled everybody in the church, right? And I remember when my parents would go for a view of a call, because they knew that there were expectations, my mom would say, or my dad would say, this is my wife, Janet. She is a musician. She plays piano. She will not be leading the women's ministry. That wasn't her calling. However, my mom did the worship ministry at every church that my dad ever pastored at, because she's an amazing musician. And so, and I know that was an old school thing too, that like the pastor's wife always played piano. So she did actually fill that expectation, but she was also like, I am not gifted in teaching and women's ministry. I will be a part of it, but I'm not interested in leading it. So how can are there expectations that you guys kind of wish that the church wouldn't put on a pastor's wife? Or how can we, as those in the congregation, respond better to the expectations we have here that maybe you don't even know we have yet?
So true.
Okay. So instantly, as you're talking, the thing that I think of is just that, not assuming that or expecting that we're going to take some role that maybe the former pastor's wife did. Because I think that's something too, like you step into this new position and they already have in their heads, well, the old pastor's wife, this is what she did. And that's great that she did that, but that may not be my calling. Just like, you don't want me working in your nursery.
Yeah, me neither.
I give me the teenagers all day
Thank
long.
you. I agree. Yes.
Or even like, and I'm down for the women's ministry and the teaching stuff. I'm probably not going to be your music person. I'm not going to be in the nursery. Like, there's just some things that I just don't feel comfortable with. I know that that's not my particular calling. I guess don't assume that every pastor's wife has the same calling on her life, because we are our own people and we have our own callings.
And I think that's true about anyone in the church, right? We are a body. We have different giftings. Why would we expect all pastors and pastors' wives to have the same giftings?
Right. Exactly. And I think one thing too, for them to know would be, if you're expecting your pastor's wife to step into a role just because you think that's what she should do, and then let's say she decides to do it just because she feels like she's expected to, then that is keeping somebody who might feel called to that area. It's honestly like robbing them of a blessing. You know what I mean? Right. Like, it's keeping them from doing what God's called them to do. And so we're all different. We all have different skill sets. We all have different gifts. And if we're, jumping into other people's gifts, then we're taking things away from other people.
That's right. Yeah. When you're talking about discipleship, I want to encourage those that may be in leadership, maybe like either women in leadership, maybe not a pastor's wife, but maybe they're the women's director at their church, or maybe they are, they co-pastor with their husband or whatever. You said, I think it was Stephanie, maybe, I don't remember who said it, but that it was hard to find discipleship because you didn't know who you could talk to. And I remember in my mom's experience, she had 2 ladies at our church that basically recognized exactly the same thing, that she was lonely and that she was going through some things. And they grabbed her and they said, we are going to start doing this study together. And for her, it was because of things that were going on in her, like I said, extended family. They're like, we're going to do the bondage breaker because we think that you have some things that you need to let go and we want to be there to support you. And what my mom learned is she could be honest with those ladies in a way that she couldn't necessarily be with everybody in the church. But she also understood what a blessing that was, because that wasn't true for all pastors' wives, and it wasn't true in all situations. So how can we find those people that we can trust to speak honestly and openly with, and really kind of get that discipleship that every person needs?
Yeah, I think the first thing is discernment. I mean, we just have to have it, because I think as pastors' wives, we've been burned a lot. If we've been in ministry for a long time, and we've met those Sally Sues that think that they're going to just help us and be so sweet and, oh, tell us, honey, what's going on. But then the whole city knows about it, the next day.
They always have a Southern accent when I talk about them too. They always talk like this.
Look at this. I mean, we can say that because we're all from the South. So,
There you go.
No making fun. Okay. But I think like it's discernment, first of all, and knowing who they are first. And I think like within the church, like my church now, I would say it was me getting to know them really well before I did let down those walls. So I got to know them better than they knew me. But then I would slowly go, you know what, I'm going to give them a little bit and see how it goes. And it just worked with me, but I know that that doesn't always happen. But I would say at this church, I do have a few women that I can share things with. I still have a little bit of walls up with certain things, depending on what I'm really struggling with. I use these 2 right here. It's good when we can like share when we're an outside opinion to each other.
Okay.
I think that really helps in a lot of ways, because you don't feel like you're gossiping because they don't know who it is and you only have to mention the name. And also you can kind of process, and they know what I'm going through to a certain extent. So I think that helps a lot, because I think a pastor wife feels alone because they don't have other pastors' wives or ministry leaders to talk to that actually know what's going on. Because it's one thing to talk to my best friend, but if she's never been through the situation, it's hard. Like she hears me, but I want to hear how you did it, how you got through it, and that you understand, because then I don't feel alone. So I think that you can have them within the church, but also find those people outside that will be your accountability, that will love you and encourage you. I think you need to have both.
How can you find that if you are finding yourself maybe just feeling very isolated and you don't know any other pastors' wives? I think there's always a way to get out there. How do we do that?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we know.
Stephanie's excited. I'll go ahead and let her share. Go ahead. Share.
We can both share. Okay. So, a few things to say. If you're wanting to find specifically other pastors' wives, I would say there's a couple things. First thing, my husband as a youth pastor actually gets together with other youth pastors in the area. Which, I mean, maybe not everyone does that, but I feel like some of these pastors do kind of know each other, even though the wives don't. And I think that that's the point where you go, can we please have this couple over? Can you invite your friend so-and-so and have him bring his wife over? And you just don't make a big deal. Throw a pizza down. I am not good in the kitchen. Like, it stresses me out. I'm like, please don't make me cook for people, but I will order you pizza and I will have whatever drinks you want and a dessert that I did not make, but it's going to taste really good. Really good. So like, to me, that's one idea. Like, just reach out. Find them, get your husband to reach out if you got to. If you're like introverted and you're scared or whatever, be like, make him do the hard work. Like, invite some people over, please. There you go. And the other thing is we are actually trying to help women do this. We created a Facebook group. It's Pastors' Wives Tell All community group. And I'm not kidding. Women are finding each other. So that we started this whole coffee challenge where we said, like, go ahead and say like what city and state you're in and find someone else in the same city and state, go meet up for coffee or whatever, and share a picture in the group. These women are making friends left and right. So like we are trying to purposely give women this opportunity. Like you're going to find other women in your same area at maybe a different church going through a lot of the same things you're probably going through. And it's helping. The group is growing. So there's lots of women from all over and people are finding each other, which is pretty cool.
And one other thing I was going to say is for those of you that are listening and you hear that I can't speak, I'm going to continue to speak.
I thought you were going to go into the English accent right there. If you listen to the podcast, they slip into an English accent at least once or twice an episode. So
I am trying to be so good and not do it right now, but it just came out, There
it is.
So, okay, here I am back. I think another thing that I would challenge women and men that are listening, whether in ministry or not, first of all, you're all in ministry. It's if you are obeying God's call where he's called you, if you're in ministry where you should be.
Go ahead and preach. Yep.
So
throwing that out there.
Just throwing that out there. But I think a big thing is what helps me and the Lord really opened my eyes to in my 30s is stop looking for people that look like you and stop looking for the same age, because I think that stops us a lot of times because we're actually, and I've even said this at the retreat, we're still in a high school mentality, no matter how old you are, that you're still looking for the people that have all of the same likes and they look a little bit like you. They might even dress like you. But what I found the most growth in my life is when I stepped outside of that. And I started looking for women that are older than me, that are younger than me, that yes, are the same age me, but different walks of life. And because that's a beautiful thing. I don't need another Jessica to be my friend. I need a Jenna. I need a Stephanie. I need a Christy. I need a Jennifer. Like I need those people in my life because their personalities, who God's created them to be, is who he needs in my life to help mold and shape me, and iron sharpens iron. So stop looking for people that look like you and look for like outside, open your eyes. And that's even in church, because some of the women that are pouring into me right now are 20 years older than me and that are 15 years, younger than me because I'm getting old. But those are the women that are changing my life and are pouring into me and that I'm learning from. So that's just, little nugget there.
I agree. And I think if everyone around you is the same age as you, the perspective that you're getting is so limited because you're probably all walking through a lot of the same similar life stuff, maybe not the same like ministry stuff. There might be someone who's only been in ministry for a couple of years and someone who's been in ministry for 20 years. Like I'm 37. You could be in ministry for 20 years at 37, but I think also the older generation, the more seasoned generation.
That's good.
There you go.
That's good. Keep talking.
Yeah. Those that are more experienced. There we go. Someone who's more experienced, you're right. They're not going to look like you, but they are going to have that wisdom that you really need. They're going to have already experienced the thing that you're experiencing and feeling like I'm the only one that's ever experienced this. And they're like, actually, I've experienced that and here's what I did. And they actually have the answer, which is why I think multi-generational discipleship is critical to anyone. And that's not just for pastors' wives. That's everybody who is, yes. And I mean, it's scriptural that we see that. Help listeners understand, how can we best support our pastors' wives? If you could talk to people in the church everywhere and you're like, this is how you could support your pastor's wife, what would you say?
We can all talk. Who wants to go first? You want to go first?
Oh my goodness. There are so many, like I don't even know where to start.
Right,
I would say the obvious, and Stephanie mentioned this earlier, is just don't assume that your pastor's wife is going to do something specific at the church. Like don't assume and then be resentful because they're not, gosh, there's so many. Oh, that's a good one. So the best thing you can do for your pastor's wife, because come on, we're doing ministry a lot. Like we're always at the church. And so when we decide we want to go on a date with our husbands, it feels wrong to ask somebody to watch your kids because it's just a lot, like my mom watches my all the time for ministry stuff. And so when it comes time for me to go on a date with my husband, we feel bad asking her again to watch them because it's so often. But I would say that the best thing that you could do for your pastor's wife, if they have kids, free babysitting. I mean, can I get an amen? Like
I'm going to say amen because I don't even have family around.
Yeah.
So if we're doing all the things we have to pay for it.
Yeah, we didn't either. And we had a couple of families in our church that became like surrogate grandparents for us. And so when my parents would go away for a weekend, they said, please just send the kids over here. How can we help you guys? And we had to lean on our church body because we didn't have family. Yeah.
Yeah. Free babysitting would be amazing. So if anybody's listening to this and they feel led to, call one of the three of us and be like, hey, y'all want to go on a date? I'll watch your kids for free. Because it gets expensive.
Yeah.
It gets really expensive.
It does.
And we recently had somebody tell us that they charged like, I want to say it was like $16 or $17 an hour for babysitting. And I was like, okay, we'll just stay inside. We'll just stay inside our house tonight. We won't go anywhere. Like
now I feel bad. I don't pay my babysitter
expensive.
that much.
No, don't feel bad. That's a lot. Okay, that's a lot.
Oh, okay. Don't assume. What was the question again? All I'm thinking about is babysitting now.
How can we support our pastors' wives?
Yes. You can support us by not asking us to do everything and not expecting us to be at every outing. That would be lovely. And not passive aggressive then mention that we weren't there. That would be helpful too.
So
next,
clearly communicating. Here we are back at communicating clearly.
Communicating. Okay. And then also, I think it would be so great. And I'm speaking more of the past than I am right now for any church members. I love you. But it would be so great if you could like go to Jesus before you go to me or my husband. And because he has all the answers and he's the one that can help do all things in your life. And sometimes we're on vacation and don't want to sit on the beach for 6 hours and listen to what's going on in your life. When you could have just talked to Jesus or your own husband. And like just calling at all times, I love because I'm a people person and Jonathan's okay with too. But if it doesn't have to be done and it's on the weekend and it's 9 or 10 o'clock and somebody's not dying or something is not really crucial, like just remember, do you want to be called at 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock at night? So just to kind of think about those things because we don't get a lot of us time. And then, when we get a call, we feel like we have to have it. Now, could we not answer? Yes. And I know to create those boundaries. And sometimes we're not good at that. And sometimes
but
we
also to be
with
okay
that.
if your pastor sets that boundary. If they don't answer your phone call, it doesn't mean they hate you.
Correct.
It means they might be drawing a boundary or they may be needing to be with their family at that time. And it's okay. Yeah.
That's so good.
I actually just heard a pastor's son talk about how when he was younger and he's like, in his, I don't know how old he is, maybe 40s, 50s. And he said that as a pastor's family, they always went camping because there wasn't cell phones back then. And it got them to a place where nobody could find them and they could have true uninterrupted family time away from ministry because no one could get a hold of them.
Yeah. And I would say my last one, because I know Stephanie, there's so many. I said this on another podcast, a whole nother thing of listeners, but I just think it's huge. And it's something that we've struggled with, especially since he's become lead pastor, is I would say, don't assume, like, it's maybe not an assumption, but don't expect my husband's sermon to be the only Jesus you need for the week. And
Wow.
then to like down it or think that he doesn't have enough scripture in it or any other thing. Because if you just came in to like watch a movie and check a box, just don't come. You know, the thing is you should be in scripture all week long. We are there on Sundays to worship together as one body, to be encouraged, to pray for each other, and then to go out and do ministry. But if all you're doing is checking a box and judging my husband's sermon, just, you know, go somewhere else, because it's not his job to have your relationship with Jesus. And so
there's no way that one sermon is going to hit the heart of every person sitting in that church.
yes.
Yeah.
And if you would just, you know, the scripture wise, if you're in scripture all week long, you're going to get something out, unless the pastor is just truly not supposed to be up there on the stage. But if you ask the Lord, God, show me what you have for me today, and you don't go in expecting, and, you know, like expecting him just to give you everything for the week, I just think that things would be better and church would be better, and there'd be less church hoppers and all the things.
So YouTube listeners that are watching this interview can see this, but those that are just listening to this interview, what you can't see is that as Jessica's talking, she like says her thing, which is maybe a piece of hard truth. And then you've got Jenna and Stephanie on the side going, ooh, oh, she didn't. Oh, she went there. You guys are making faces like, well, all right.
We do that often.
Oh my gosh.
Like it.
Yeah,
We like
absolutely.
it a lot.
That's why it's pastors' wives tell all, right? Not just some things. Yeah.
Right. We have to tell all the things.
That's right.
Yeah. So another thing I think could be a good way to support your pastor's wife is to ask her how she's doing, like for real, and be okay when she says, I'm not good. I'm not okay. Allow that door to be open and not be like, oh, wait, well, hold on. You was just supposed to say good. And we were supposed to keep walking.
Right.
You
right,
know,
yeah.
but truly be like, hey, how are you doing? What do you
Mhm.
need? Because we're constantly giving to other people and what they need, which is great. Like we love doing that, but to support us, it would be so great to hear that from some people,
Yeah.
you know?
I just had a phone call with a friend, and her and I do a lot of ministry together. And I called her today, and because they've got sickness in their house. And so I called and I said, hey, how is it in Sicky land? And she's like, well, kind of frustrating. And so she was kind of, you know, telling me about that. And then she goes, okay, so what did you need? I'm like, nothing. Like, I just want to call and check on you, make sure you're surviving because you're not sick and other people in your house are. And she's like, oh, thanks. You know, like, and I realize like most of our conversations are something that is happening with ministry, but sometimes you just need to call someone and just say, I just wanted to check in on you. I just wanted to see how things are going. I didn't really need anything from you. You know, and I'm sure that's important to a pastor's wife.
Were you about to go into something else?
I was going to finish.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, you go ahead and you finish.
Jenna just totally stole the mic from Stephanie, you know.
I don't have to finish.
You did it.
Jessica just started slowly. They're like, Stephanie's talked enough.
Like, Stephanie's
gonna-
done. She doesn't know
We're
it,
going
but
to
she's done.
move the mic away from her. I was just going to add one little tiny thing to that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, you know, supporting them, letting them feel their feelings and all that. And I can think of a particular situation. Well, I will just say this. When people go through loss, they, of course, like they want to hear from the pastor or his family, or it's just especially the pastors, right?
Yeah.
And we want to be there and we want to support those who are going through loss, of course. But I know I went through a really hard time of loss. I lost my best friend to cancer back in 2010. It was one of the hardest things I've ever dealt with. But I didn't really get any sort of anything from anybody. I had one friend who really, like, we had gotten sort of close at the time. And she was I think the only one that was really like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like I would literally, like, I was at church and I'd have to walk away and sob for a little bit and then come back. But there was no real, I don't remember there being any kind of like support system through that. And so that's really hard. And so just know what they're going through. Pay attention to if something hard is going on, and like really reach out. I mean, we have a friend right now pastor's wife, who just found out that her child has leukemia. Like, and I don't know what her church's response is, but all I can think is I hope and pray that they are reaching out to her and they are loving on her just as she and her husband would do for them.
Yeah.
This kind of piggybacks off of what Stephanie was saying about just checking in on your pastor's wife. There's a lot of pastors' wives out there who they might feel like they need to put on a mask, you know, at church or, you know, wherever they're doing ministry. And so don't just assume that your pastor's wife is okay. You know, like check, like Stephanie said, check in with them and maybe push a little bit if you have to. You know, I think that it's so important that people understand that we do not have it all together. We are human, just like you.
Yeah.
We are flawed and we struggle with the same things that you struggle with. And people do not think that that is the case. People literally think that we are like high and mighty and that we don't, you know, fight with our husbands and that we don't yell at our kids.
That's right.
And we don't, I mean, so have I, and I hadn't seen them in a day. Like, it's true. And so please understand that we are just like you. And so for you to put all of that really pressure, you know, an assumption on us, that's just hard. Like, you just got to understand that we're the same. We're the same people, you know? And yes, we do have a role that, you know, where we should be, I don't want to say striving, but striving to follow Jesus. And, you know, yes, to all of that, but also we're human. We're not perfect. So,
yeah. And I'm assuming if you really want this true answer, that Sunday morning in the lobby at church is probably not the time to say, hey, how are you? And expect a really clear answer.
No. Don't do that.
So it requires reaching out midweek or,
right.
You know, having coffee, organizing coffee with them or something like that, and really sitting down one-on-one.
Right. Because we'll probably tell you on a Sunday morning in the lobby, we'll talk later. Like, you know, let's get together.
Have you ever tried to get kids to church when your husband had to be there an hour earlier than you did, and you're responsible for getting all 3 kids to church? It wasn't great.
Right.
Me. All right. So, I mean, I think that you guys have a great ministry to pastors' wives everywhere. And I think also what you are allowing those of us that are not a pastor's wives to see is kind of the reality, the true person that a pastor's wife can be and should be, and how we can reach out. I think that's wonderful. And so tell us, how can we find Pastors' Wives Tell All? How can we, you know, get a hold of you guys, and maybe if there's some pastors' wives listening, how can they become a part of your community?
Okay. So you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook and TikTok at Pastors' Wives Tell All. We also have a website, pastorwivestellall.com. And if you go to our website, a little pop-up will come up and you can even join the email party, which you will get some free printables specifically for pastors' wives and encouragement verse printables. So yes. And then also, of course, our lovely Facebook community group. It's Pastors' Wives Tell All community group. I think that's one of my favorite things right now that we have going on, because I feel like it's the most personal as far as these women. Actually, it's not all about us in that group. It is not. It's these women are posting their struggles and asking for prayer. These women are posting encouragement, like, hey, this happened and I thought it might encourage y'all. They're posting funny memes. They're just meeting each other and praying. We had one lady that had a need, and the women came together and gave her a baby shower because her church wasn't doing it, and other people anyway. And like these women just came together and they've done other things like that. It is just such a sweet space. So we hope you'll come to that as well.
I don't know. It sounds like such a sweet space. You might get some women in there that aren't pastors' wives. They're like, I need that.
Oh, we have. We've had that.
Okay.
But one of the other things I was going to say is if you follow us on any of those platforms, especially Instagram and Facebook, and the email, that you will see that we have meetups that we will tell you about ahead of time. Like our next one is going to be in Nashville, hopefully. Yes, Nashville. Yes.
Nashville.
In the fall.
Okay.
And also, so we will have those kind of pop-up meetups and then retreats. We would love.
Meetups are free.
Oh yes, meetups are free. I mean, except for you need to pay for your own food. Yep. Mhm.
Hey.
And but also retreats. And so we've started that this year, and it was so amazing.
Mhm.
And we have some that hopefully will get lined up really soon for next year.
Okay, well, if there is a meetup in Arizona, I want to know, because
Okay.
or if y'all want to come to Arizona, I will get a meetup together.
Yes. You do it, girl. If you have any conferences you want us to come speak out, or if you just want us to come hang out, we're there for it.
I mean, this has been so much fun. I'm down for that.
And then also, I think this goes without saying, but we do have a podcast.
Yes.
And you can listen to it
So true.
on all
There's that little
on
thing.
all podcast platforms. Well, I mean, we laugh, but like there's a lot of people in the
Oh, yeah.
Pastors' Wives community group on Facebook who don't even realize that we have a podcast. And so we have to pop in there every now and then and be like, hey, we actually have a podcast. We're in season 4 right now.
You
we
guys just
release new
started
episodes-
season 4, right?
Yes. And we release new
Yeah.
episodes every Monday. So
Okay.
it's super
Awesome.
fun.
You know, I don't know how I didn't mention that, since that's like the biggest thing we do. That's why we're like 3 heads, but that think on different bodies.
We sure are 3 heads. That's true.
Do you know, I was talking to
3 brains.
somebody in the lobby at church, actually, and we were talking about like what I do. I was like, yeah, I'm a mom, and I do this, and my husband literally piped in, and she has a podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And he's like, how do you forget that's like what you do? And I'm like, I don't know. You just
It's a mom brain.
that's it. Well, we have a question at the end. Oh, Jenna, do you have something else to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I've just had this pop into my brain. I feel like we need to start doing video podcasts. This is so fun.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
This is
Like,
really
why
fun.
aren't we doing this?
Because we do too many crazy things, and you would spend a lot of time editing.
I do have to edit out a lot. but maybe we should just try it a couple times and just see what happens. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like we're just having our own podcast over here. When Courtney's like, "Oh,
Hey.
hello, I'm still here."
Oh no, go ahead. It's the podcast takeover. I've seen a couple people do that actually, where they like allow someone to like take over their podcast for the day, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting,
That's so
and it's kind of brings the two.
We tried to do that with the
audiences together.
husbands.
Oh, I love your episodes with your husbands. I really do.
So does everyone
glad
else.
somebody does.
Everyone else does too. They're some of our highest viewed.
Yeah, they bring their husbands on, and your husbands sometimes are like, I don't know what's going on anymore, because you guys are laughing and joking about something, and they're like, do you know what's going on? I don't know what's going on. It's so funny, but I love it. Well, we have one question that we ask, and so I'm going to let you guys answer it separately, because we are meant for community. Who has helped you along in your journey? Jenna wasn't
Wow.
ready. She wasn't ready.
I wasn't ready.
That's why I did it.
But
Just got the mic pushed to you, so I guess you have to go first.
okay, my life journey. I don't
Spiritual journey, life journey. Who's helped you along?
helped
I
you
know
in
it's a lot of
spiritual
people, and you could even say a lot of people. I'm sorry I missed someone. This is the first person popping into my head.
Goodness. Okay. I honestly don't feel like I knew who I was as a human until I was 33, and I'm
Amen.
36 now. So, and when I say that, like they will tell you that I just have a hard time remembering things. And it's just like, when I think
Okay.
about my life before a few years ago, I'm like, what was I even doing? And obviously like my parents, they're amazing. I love my parents so much. I owe everything to them. I do.
Mm.
But I would say more recently in life, my husband, obviously I have to throw his name out there too, because I love him so much. But this one right here, like Jessica Taylor, I'm just that sounds so cliche or whatever, but like she has been such a discipleship mentor to me, like in the last few years. Like I can't even, like, I'll cry if I start talking about it too much, but like honestly, this girl right here, she will hold me accountable in all of the best ways. And if I come to her with something, she's like, have you talked to Jesus yet? Like, and I'm like, okay.
You're like,
No,
hold
bye.
on. Let me hang up. I'll call you back.
Yes. But she really has. She has held me accountable, and she makes me, she encourages me to do hard things and to put God first. And like, honestly, I owe so much to her. So much.
Wow. Thank you, Jenna. I'm now
I love you so much.
I would have to say a lot of people. I've just had such a beautiful adventure with Jesus. And it has been a lot of people. So just to mention a few, of course, would be my mom. She's the woman who prayed for me, who had to deal with this Enneagram 8 self as a child. And
that's why she speaks her mind. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm married to an Enneagram 8.
Oh, hope
Yeah.
he's healthy.
What are you?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm a 2-3.
Okay.
Look at that. And so, yeah, she prayed over me as like I was a baby, and she said, Lord, she is not mine, have her. And she prayed that prayer as a baby. And I think, you know, I am who I am today, largely because of her prayer.
Wow.
And then my husband, of course, he has just been there, and we have done ministry and life together, and I wouldn't want to do it with another person. And then John Baptiste, which is in Africa. He is the pastor that we work with. He has radically changed my life and my mind on missions, and has just been my partner in crime, and all the right crime, with our mission, what we're doing and what God's called us to.
Say his name again, because you cut out.
John Baptiste.
Okay.
Jusimere. And then just all of my friends, and of course these two right here. I would encompass all of my friends, because I do have a really great friend support system that they're a part of. And
Awesome.
I think one thing that these two have allowed me to do that I've never been able to do before is I've been able to be like my full self, because I never, it took me like a couple of years to kind of come up with that. And I was never able to I was almost different Jessica at different places, equally Jessica, but just like, I'm really love to be goofy, and I'm crazy, and I love to be funny. And I was not like that with everyone. So this is where I found freedom to do that with Jenna, to start off with, and then to be able to do it with Stephanie. It's just, I mean, I've never laughed more hard than when we're together. I should have so many abs. I don't, because I eat as much as I laugh, but
Stephanie sometimes looks at me and Jessica like we are 3-headed monsters. She's like,
we just thought that we would scare Stephanie away. You're like, you have no clue what you're getting into. But she loved us, and she stuck around.
Stephanie, who's helped you along in your journey?
Okay, so I feel like it's multiple people as well. They're all gone.
Yeah.
They out now.
Right.
But there were some teachers along the way that, because I was always in a Christian school, and there were a few along the way that really, I feel like, poured into me and really spoke Jesus over my life, and that I learned a lot from. So there's a couple of them. Also, I would say there was a particular lady at my last church. She was a little bit older than me. And when I was going through a really hard time, I didn't know who to talk to. And when I finally, because I hadn't even told my mom or sister, I told them like lots of things, but I had not told them all the things I was going through. And it had been like 3 years that I had been going through this junk and not even talking to them about it. Wow. Finally mentioned it. And she was like, why don't you talk to so-and-so? And she mentioned this particular lady that was in our church at the time. And I thought, you know what? I feel like she is someone I could speak to and it wouldn't go anywhere. And not that I even fully gave all the details, because some stuff was going on with people in the church and that sort of thing. But the funny thing is, with wise people, sometimes they already know. Yeah. And she saw things that I did not realize anybody saw. and knew things I didn't think anybody knew. And when I spoke to her, I just remember everything was pointed back to Jesus. And it was like the first time I could really maybe talk about how hurt I felt. And I didn't feel judged. And I felt like she cared. And she just, I just feel like Jesus just came off of her. Like you could sense it when she was in the room.
Wow.
And so that's just amazing. I have another friend from college who is somebody that, oh my goodness, actually, Jessica kind of reminds me of her. They both have big hearts for missions, and they like doing scary, bigger things for God. And so she has always said things that were like, I was just like, wow, I want to be like that. I want to serve God like that. And so that made an impact on me as well. And I still keep in contact with her. And then, of course, these ladies came into my life just a couple years ago. I'm so glad they let me be their friend. I'm not kidding. Like when I first got in, because the time that I knew that we were actually like real friends, I got invited to Jessica's little birthday shindig with like her little closest friends got together, and I got invited to, and I was like, oh my gosh,
I'm in.
I am her friend for real. I'm not kidding. And I was so nervous. I'm like, I'm going to screw this up.
Oh my gosh.
No, this is no joke. I even called Jenna afterwards, and I was like, I need you to tell me the truth. Was I too much? She's like, we're all too much. What are you talking about?
That's why you fit in. Please don't be less.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh.
I just want to say really quick, I was not leaving you out. Like, I love you too, Stephanie. You know, I just want to
need you to know that.
I know you were not leaving me out.
Okay.
But I also know that this one can really speak truth in a way that just not a lot of people can do it the way she does it, where it's in love, but it's very honest and truthful. So like, I was actually feeling everything you said about this one. Yeah. I totally get it. It's just different with this one. She's feeling real good right now.
I'm feeling real awkward right now. That's what I'm feeling.
That's what I'm feeling.
I'm going to receive it because I'm not good at receiving, but I also want to crawl in a hole right now. But thank you.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being honest with us, for helping us to maybe get a new perspective on our pastor's wife and how we can serve her and minister to her. Thank you for what you do on your podcast and how you kind of are just an encouragement for those that might feel alone where they're at. And it's a necessary ministry, and you guys have stepped into that to where God has called you. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. We had such a fun time.
Thank you for having us. We enjoyed it.
Yes.
We love you already. You're amazing.
Now we just need to come hiking in Arizona. Let's do it.
Seriously, let's do it.
I don't go hiking.
You two can hike, and Jenna and I shall do something else. We can shop.
Scottsdale. We'll go hiking in Scottsdale, and then we'll go to the spa.
Yeah. Yes. I'm there at a spa.
Awesome.
Yes.
Fabulous. All right, ladies. Thank you so much.